Welcome back, focused learners. Today, we're tackling a feeling I'm sure we all know entirely too well. It's that massive, incredibly frustrating gap between our biggest ambitions and our actual everyday actions. You know exactly what I mean, right? You buy those beautiful new planners, you set the early morning alarms, you write out these incredible, life-changing goals. You map the whole thing out perfectly in your head. But somehow, when it actually comes time to do the work, getting moving just feels completely impossible. Okay, let's dive into this explainer and uncover the secret to killing laziness once and for all.
So, why do our big goals actually fail? It's a genuinely tough question, and honestly, it's one that haunts a lot of us. Look, you're an ambitious person, you've got big dreams, you want to achieve phenomenal success, make a fantastic living, and design a daily life you truly love. You probably even know exactly what you need to do and the exact steps to get there. But when the time comes to actually execute, nothing happens. You sit down at your desk, stare at that blinking cursor on your screen or the cover of your closed textbook, and suddenly getting moving feels like wading through wet cement. You just feel completely paralyzed. It's the sheer inability to just sit down and do the hard work. Why does this exact scenario happen to the best of us over and over again?
Well, it happens because we get completely trapped in this painfully familiar, exhausting cycle. We always start out with such high ambitions and crystal clear intentions. But when we inevitably don't take action, it breathes this stinging, growing guilt deep inside us. You know that heavy, sinking feeling? Because you inherently know you're capable of so much more than what you're doing right now. And gradually, as days turn into weeks and months, that guilt exhausts our mental energy. It morphs into this toxic, whatever attitude. Then comes the classic New Year's resolution loop. Your motivation spikes for a few days. You at the gym at 5 a.m., you study hard for a week, you meal prep flawlessly. But inevitably, the old patterns return. Procrastination creeps back in like a pesky, unwanted guest who just refuses to leave, literally eating all the food in your mental fridge. Eventually, a single lazy day turns into a daily habit. You throw your hands up, surrender to the couch, and accept a totally false identity. You end up telling yourself, I guess I'm just a lazy person. But here is the profound truth that changes everything. You are not lazy. You are just stuck. Seriously, let that sink in for a second. I want that realization to just wash over you and relieve some of that heavy, suffocating guilt you've been carrying around for months or maybe even years. Society constantly tells us that if we aren't grinding 24/7, it's a moral failure. But that isn't true at all. You are not inherently a flawed, unmotivated, or lazy person. You're simply trapped in a temporary state of behavioral standstill. And understanding the difference between being permanently flawed and being temporarily stuck, that is the exact key to breaking free. To understand why we get stuck, we actually need to look at fundamental science. Think back to your basic physics classes and the concept of inertia. Now, what's really interesting about this concept is how remarkably simple and universal it is. An object at rest stays at rest, and an object in motion stays in motion. This exact same principle applies perfectly to our daily habits and human psychology. When we're stuck in a resting phase, maybe we're locked to the couch, wrapped up in a warm blanket, endlessly scrolling through our phones, our body and mind desperately want to stay right there. The internal friction to change states is just massive. We don't need a total personality overhaul, we just need a tiny push. A slight, deliberate disruption to transition from a state of rest into a state of active motion. And that brings us to a really massive realization. The problem isn't the work itself. The problem is the start. When we look at a big project or a looming deadline, we tend to magnify that very first step in our minds until it becomes this massive, impossible roadblock. We look at the absolute mountain of effort required to finish the whole entire task, and the sheer scale of it stops us from even trying. We convince ourselves that starting requires this Herculean amount of energy, like we need a perfectly clean desk, a fresh cup of artisan coffee, the absolute perfect playlist, and 3 solid hours of completely uninterrupted time just to begin. And because we don't have all those perfect conditions magically lined up, we just decide not to start at all. The resistance to beginning is always, always worse than the actual work. And this brilliantly illustrates the difference between setting yourself up to fail and setting yourself up to win. Think about brain overload for a second. If you tell yourself you need to sit down and write a full 5,000-word essay, or deep clean your entire disorganized house, or revise a whole semester's syllabus in one night, your brain immediately panics. It heavily resists that massive expenditure of energy. It's screaming, "No way, that's way too hard." Instead, we need to opt for the smart start. Commit to writing just 50 words. Clean for the duration of one single 3-minute song, or just open your notes and read for exactly 2 minutes.
By shrinking the task down to something microscopic, you completely disarm your brain's natural resistance. It's so incredibly small, your mind literally says, well, okay, that's easy enough. I can handle doing that without getting totally exhausted.
Which leads us to a wildly effective tactic you can use right this second: the 2-minute rule. It's an immediate, low-friction, and absolutely foolproof way to bypass that mental friction when you absolutely positively do not feel like working. So here's exactly how you do it. Step 1. Notice the mental resistance. Stop fighting it. Just acknowledge the feeling and say, okay, I really don't want to do this task right now. Step 2. Make a tiny bargain with yourself. You're going to negotiate with your brain like it's a stubborn toddler. Tell it, I will do this for just 2 minutes. After that, we have full permission to quit, walk away, and go back to scrolling. Step 3. Just take the action. Open the book. Type the very first sentence of your email. Put away just one single item of clothing. Give it 2 minutes of your time, knowing you can honestly stop when that timer goes off. So the crucial point is, why does this tiny little trick actually work so well? Well, because in reality, you rarely ever stop after those 2 minutes are up. That tiny 2-minute action creates immediate physical motion. And just like the law of inertia taught us earlier, motion builds self-sustaining momentum. Because once you cross that painfully annoying threshold of simply starting, the hardest part is already in your rearview mirror. The psychological dread vanishes. Your energy, your focus, and your motivation naturally return because you're already fully engaged in the activity. You tricked your brain into starting, and now the momentum essentially takes over the hard work for you. Think of it like the heavy ball effect. Just imagine you're standing at the top of a steep hill, trying to push a massive, heavy, rusted iron ball. That initial push requires almost all of your bodily strength. It feels incredibly difficult, straining your muscles, making you sweat. It feels almost impossible to move it even an inch. But once it finally budges, once it slowly turns and starts rolling down that hill, it essentially moves completely on its own. You hardly have to touch it to keep it going at blazing speed. That is exactly how behavioral psychology and momentum work together in your daily life. The task is only difficult until it starts rolling, so stop worrying about the entire exhausting journey. Just focus on your energy on giving your task that very first tiny nudge. Let's do a quick mental exercise together. Think about the number 30. Imagine exactly where you'll be and how much better you will feel in exactly 30 days if you just commit to these 2 to 10-minute micro starts daily. Think about it. Those big, intimidating goals that have been stuck in the mud for years, the novel you want to write, the business you want to start, the fitness level you want to reach, they will slowly but undeniably start to become reality. This proves that the true secret to success isn't having some magical, endless reservoir of motivation that only highly successful, special people possess. No way. The secret is simply mastering the art of taking the first step. Over 30 days, those tiny, effortless starts compound into massive, life-altering achievements. There's a beautiful and incredibly relevant quote by Martin Luther King Jr. that perfectly encapsulates this entire concept, and it goes like this: "You don't have to see the whole staircase, just take the first step." It is such a profound reminder for us. You don't need to have the entire massive project mapped out flawlessly in your head before you begin. You don't need to feel perfectly energized, the stars don't need to align, and you definitely don't need to be completely motivated. Taking a tiny, seemingly insignificant first step isn't just a clever hack, it is your absolute ultimate victory over laziness. That first step is literally everything. So, I'm going to leave you with this final, most important question to wrap up today's explainer. What will you start in the next 2 minutes? Seriously, think about it right now. Don't wait for the perfect mood, don't wait for the perfect workspace setup, and definitely don't wait for a new week or new year to roll around. Take that 2-minute roll, pick one tiny little thing you've been putting off, and just start. Break your inertia right now. Go get started, and I'll see you in the next explainer.